Hi there. Welcome to The PrevenTable, the podcast giving you a seat at the table with conversations about the intersection of alcohol, drugs, and mental health in everyday lives. Take a seat and join us.
Welcome to The PrevenTable. I am so incredibly excited for the guest that I have with me today. Not just because it's a really interesting topic, just because I like her as a person. So with me today is Kirti Madhu. Am I saying that right?
Yeah.
I did. Why do I always... I don't know. Anyway, Kirti, welcome. Welcome to The PrevenTable.
Thank you for having me.
So we figured out like 2 days ago that I've known you since you were like 14, 15?
Yeah.
Okay. That's a long time. And how we first got to know each other is as a high schooler, you came to Teen Institute.
Yep.
So talk a little bit about why did you go to Teen Institute? What did you think when you got there? And then, what was your experience there?
Yeah, so I originally came to Teen Institute. My school was sending someone for free. I really just had nothing to do that summer, and it seemed like a lot of fun, just from like what I was looking on online, and so I decided to go. But it was probably better than I could have expected. My experience there specifically, I know in school a lot, whenever it comes to substance use and topics like that, the conversation is very just surface level. There's no conversation about like how your brain works in response to using substances. It's just don't do drugs. It's bad.
Yeah.
And that's kind of it. But what I liked about Teen Institute was over the few days we were there, it wasn't just, someone talking at you. It was a lot of collaborative activities that really helped it get in my brain, like this is how substances affect people, which I think is a really important part of the conversation, especially when it comes to the younger generations. Like I know my friends who might have not had the experience to go to Teen Institute, when I tell them about my experience and things I learned there, like definitely clicks a lot easier for us.
And you, I wonder, I've never asked you this before, you're wanting to be a doctor now. Spoiler alert, we're going to get to some of this later on in the episode. But had you been interested in medicine before, and did you go into it with that lens, like kind of like I want to know really how this works and how to like prevent this, or were you really just going because you were like, I don't have anything else to do and this would probably look good on a college resume?
So I did want to be a doctor.
Okay.
Like pretty much my whole life. So I still had that. I think when I got there, I definitely, when I knew that was like something we were going to be talking about, I think that was something that I was really interested in.
Yeah.
But I didn't realize I was interested in that until I, got the agenda of this is what we're going to be doing the next couple of days. But I, probably subconsciously, like before, that was something I was interested in. I never really thought about addiction in that way and like how it affects your health. Because again, in school and everything, they never taught it to us that way.
Right.
So it wasn't something that I was familiar with, but I think it was something I was curious about whenever I was considering going.
So we had Allie and Grace on a previous episode talking about TI. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that we talked just a little bit about was one of the sessions that is, I think, our favorite. So much so that we either co-lead it or kind of help co-facilitate. Yeah. And that's really this idea of carefrontation or tough talk, right? How to have a conversation with somebody that you're concerned about. And I wonder if you left Teen Institute empowered to have conversations with some of your friends that maybe were starting to experiment that you were nervous about. Or I wonder too, like, we talked about the fact that you have all different kinds of teenagers that go to Teen Institute. Some people have experimented with substances before. Some come from families where substance use is a big deal. Others are in leadership and just want to figure out, what does that leadership look like for them? So could you talk about, like, if you had any of those challenges, broad strokes, I don't need names or anything, and then how you were able to use some of the things from TI in your own life?
Yeah, so I definitely think going into TI, that was something that was on my mind. Like, I knew going into high school that people might start doing stuff like that. I have an older sister, so I kind of knew, like...
Yeah, you observed.
I observed what was happening in her life and, like, with people who were in her class and her age. So that was definitely something that was on my mind, and I definitely felt empowered. That's why it's one of my favorite workshops we do during TI, is because I felt so empowered with that information. I definitely think it was useful, even when talking to people who might not be using yet.
Yeah.
In those conversations, just being like, this is what I learned, and like, if you guys ever do use, like, just know I care about you, and like, I want to help you if there's anything that like goes wrong or whatever. So I think it helps beyond just someone's already using and showing them you care about them, but also people who might be at risk of using, whether it's like family factors that play into that, or they're just really curious about experimenting and really want to try it out. I think care fronting can also play a role in that. That's definitely where I've used it a lot. But especially whenever I started college, I think I used it more.
Yeah,
in like
for sure.
Like, I care about you. I'm worried about like how you're using. Like, let's figure out a way that I can support you.
Yeah, yeah. And so you were so great that then you applied as an intern and you were accepted. And I feel like you applied again and you were accepted again or something. Okay. And then we asked you to come back as like a junior staff. And then we've asked you to come back again, and we've taken the junior role out, and like, you're a staff person, right? You're a paid staff person. And throughout all of this, you have been pursuing your studies in college, EMS, or EMT?
So I have my EMT license. I went to school separately for that.
Of course you did. Okay,
when
was that, by the way?
That was like over the summer. I took
because
like
in my
summer.
brain you're like 14. So okay, so during the summer between what, like senior year and freshman year of college,
junior year and senior year of college,
you can become an EMS like senior year of.
You can do it whenever you want, Nicole. You can go get your EMT license right now if you want.
Well, okay. Okay. All right. So you have your license.
Yes.
So what does that mean?
So
like, you're riding around on an ambulance?
Yeah, so I can ride around on an ambulance.
I did not know this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so that was like part of my clinicals. I was able to do that around like county and city area, and then I can also get training like at a clinic and work in a clinic as well.
And so during this time, you were also doing some work with our guided program, which is leading workshops for students in high school who've made some missteps, and kind of helping them learn some information to make some healthier choices. So you're doing that. You get your EMS, EMT. What's the difference?
My EMT license. EMS is just like the overall umbrella of it.
But it's emergency
medical technician.
That's what you are.
Yes.
So you're a senior in college and you are an EMT. Mm-hmm. Okay, of course. Okay. So you are helping and staffing TI. You're helping and performing workshops with guided. You get your EMT license. You're still in school because you are still wanting to be a doctor. Mm-hmm. Okay. And then you come home and you tell your parents that you want to get a business degree too. Is this how this goes?
So
like, help me.
The business part was like totally an accident. I was involved in a program. It was called Med Launch. Now it's called SLU Launch, but that's irrelevant. But Med Launch was a program that connected pre-med, like biomedical engineering type of students with like the business school. So they would pick or get a problem in healthcare, and they would have to think of a solution, a business solution for it.
So kind of like Shark Tank.
Yes.
Sort of. Okay.
A majority of those projects are like senior biomedical engineering students who are doing like their senior design project through this program.
Okay.
My professor told us about it in like my medical biochemistry class, and so I applied because I was like, seems fun. And then and then I did it, and then I was like way too passionate about what I was working on, And then
here we are.
Here we are.
Okay, so talk to us about your initial project, and then where that kind of led you to how it started to morph. So talk about your initial project and then kind of how it started to morph a little bit.
Yeah, so through the Med Launch project, I knew like for sure the problem that I wanted to tackle was the opioid epidemic and the number of opioid related overdose deaths yearly, because that number is always going up. And I knew that was the main thing I wanted to tackle, especially with a lot of other things extracurriculars I'm doing. I really found that was kind of a big problem within, especially the St. Louis community. So I for sure wanted to tackle that. And the first thing that came to mind was a patch that would detect vitals that are associated with opioid overdose and then be able to inject naloxone directly into your bloodstream and then reverse the overdose and get you emergency services to where you are to get help. So that's how the project started.
And so it would have been kind of like a diabetes patch or something like that, like Nicoderm or something kind of like that. And you started doing a lot of research and focus groups.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So I was doing a lot of that through the Med Launch program. And I was focusing a lot of the conversation I was having with people in the prevention space or physicians.
Or people in recovery.
Yeah,
right,
or people in recovery. And I was having a lot of conversations about that to create this product and figure out the best way to create it. Again, at the beginning of this, I wasn't completely sure if it was going to be a real thing yet.
Yeah, because when you first talked to me about it, I think the way you said is this is a hypothetical product that could potentially, gain some traction. But really, the idea is to come up with innovative solutions, right? That then maybe work, maybe they don't work, maybe it gets other ideas going, maybe some investor picks it up or something like that. But you kind of thought that was all really a long shot, to be honest, right?
And I thought the farthest it was going to go was I was going to, think of this idea, maybe come up with a prototype for it, and then, some fancy doctor or whatever was going to be I'll take that from you. And then I was just never going to touch it again.
See it again.
That did not happen.
Yes.
So as Med Launch continued, I just kept working on it. I did make a prototype for it and everything. We did presentation for it. And at that point, I was very invested in what I was doing. And after talking to mentors within the Med Launch program, realized this needs to be an actual thing. And I was I can't trust anyone else to do it.
Because it's yours.
It's mine. I have to do it.
It's your baby. It's your passion project. It's your intellectual property.
Yes.
All of these things.
Yeah.
And so at what point or is this the point where you develop this prototype, but then you realize it needs to be tweaked?
So I, a little bit after that. So I applied to a program called the New Venture Accelerator at SLU, which is for startup businesses. They pick up to 5 companies. So I was one of 4 for this cohort. And within the first week of our cohort, we were talking about customer discovery and getting out and talking to people and really emphasizing how important that is. So I went back to doing that, continued having conversations with people I'd already met, set up meetings with new people, but this time I also talked to people who were actively using.
Now, how did you find those folks, and what was the consent process like?
Yeah, so a lot of it was just walking around my neighborhood, different communities around campus, and just approaching people, just saying, hey, I'm a student, I'm working on a project and I would love to know what your thoughts are on this topic.
Yeah.
And just getting feedback that way, but not telling them what exactly I was working on. Through those conversations, because I had that whole new population, I realized people who are actively using, they don't really want something that's injecting something into them.
Got it. Because why?
It was they don't want something that is always stuck in them. They want the freedom to be able to, decide when they want to put something in their body.
Got it.
And that was like the main.
Which is probably for some people listening, probably like they're having a hard time wrapping their brains around it because they're like, wait, why would they not want naloxone in them if they're putting all this other crap into their bodies? Like for some people listening, that might be like a contradiction.
Yeah.
But it is a lot about the freedom, right? Or the perception of freedom. Especially, I'm assuming that you talked with a lot of unhoused folks.
Yes. Yeah.
And a lot of unhoused folks value freedom over a lot of other things, which is why when some people are like, well, why don't they just go live in a shelter? Or why don't they just, well, some of them just don't want to.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. So you get this knowledge from them, this feedback that they don't want something in them. So then how do you pivot?
So then, but the consensus was still there when I was talking to these folks that they still would be okay with having something that could tell them when they were overdosing.
Oh, because another perception is that drug users want to die.
Yeah. And that's not always the case.
Correct.
And like they still want to use. I remember someone telling me like they still want to use, but they don't want to die because they want to wake up the next morning and have that freedom to use again if they want to. And I think that really stuck with me.
That's very powerful.
Yeah. When I was doing all this research, and I think that is really what made me think, okay, I have to change what I'm working on. So then I kind of took all the injecting naloxone stuff out of it and decided, let me just focus on a detection device.
So can I ask a question? Yeah. Knowing you, I don't know you that well, but I know you fairly well. You are used to succeeding. Yeah. Okay. You have an idea, you want to do something, you do it. Was there a point where you were like, I put in all this time and effort into this injecting device, and now I'm in this program on this prototype, and I have to pivot? Like, was there a moment of, oh shit? Or was it like, this is science. This is what science is?
I think I would have been more like upset. I don't think I was. I think I would have been more upset though if I had to completely scratch what I was doing, because I was just taking a part of the patch out, essentially, like just taking the injection part. The other stuff was already done.
Got it.
I had already completed that stuff separately. And also the part of like, it is science. I do a lot of research also outside of school. So, you know, things are always going wrong in research too, and you always have to pivot and change what you're doing. So it was the same thing when it came to that. And like, I kind of knew that going into this accelerator was like keeping an open mind because I was new to this, the space of business. And like the people who were coming in to give those workshops that we were having have been doing this like their whole lives. So I think that also kind of helped me be like, okay, it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
This is like, also I think the other part is I was really motivated by wanting to help my community and help people who are at risk at opioid overdose deaths. And I think that was like a big motivating factor in being like, this is what is going to help people. This is what people are going to use versus the original idea.
Instead of being stuck in your own idea, you're like, well, if they want this, then I'm going to do this because this is going to help people stay alive.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So you decide to kind of scrap the idea of the injectable piece. And then what happens? And
so then I was pivoted. I was kind of thinking of ways where I could get all the same vitals to be accurate. So like heart rate, pulse oxygen, all that type of stuff, to still be accurate, but be something that could be wearable and discreet, comfortable, like not something super bulky.
Right. That's not like, I'm wearing a overdose detection device, like a big ankle monitor or something like that. Yeah. Right.
So I landed on doing like a bracelet, because through my research of like manufacturing stuff like that and looking at like actual sensors and all the hardware that would actually go into the device, that seemed to be the easiest thing I can make. Like I can make it look like a Fitbit almost.
Okay.
So that's what I landed on. And then the other plus side to doing that is not only could people get like a free bracelet from a prevention organization near them. People who had like an Apple Watch could connect it, download an app that we made, and connect it to that, and still have all the same vitals, but have an app to like kind of track it.
So you have a bracelet and an app, and the idea behind it is that let me just make sure that I understand this, that it detects when vitals are like diminishing or changing to denote an overdose, and then it does what?
Yeah, so once those vitals hit like the threshold of an opioid overdose, according to countless research papers, it sends a notification to EMS services. So only the ambulances get this notification. So a lot of people, another thing we found out during customer discovery that we did was a lot of people were scared, like, oh, the police is going to come and I'm going to end up in jail.
I'm going to get arrested, right.
And
also in Missouri, there's a lot of concerns about privacy.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But if it's just alerting EMS, then that takes a lot of those concerns out of there.
Yeah, so the EMS gets like a separate system from us that says, okay, this person is like, these are their vitals. They're most likely experiencing an overdose or some other condition that's giving them like these vitals. So that way they can come prepared, and it's just EMS services. The bracelet also has a little alarm on it to notify bystanders. Oh. So if anyone's around with Narcan, they can come help as well. Or even, like, I know now a big thing is, like, never use alone. So if someone's using and someone's next to them, that person can also, like, know when to help them.
Well, I think one of the most powerful, I was privileged to sit in on some of the discovery focus groups you were doing, not with people actively using, but with some folks who have lived experience or are in the prevention space, or people who have lost loved ones. And I think one of the most powerful comments that I heard, and I'm sure you've had countless others, was from Patty Fitzwalter, who, her and Ellis, her husband, they lost their son Michael, and they were, I think, so grateful to you. And I think they realized that had they had one of those bracelets on their son, and maybe had they had the app, that they would have been able to intervene with naloxone. And so I can imagine, as you're telling folks about your product, that you're hearing a lot of that, like, oh, we wish we would have had this, or, we wish we would have known about this product, or where were you 10 years ago? Are you hearing a lot of that?
Yeah, definitely a lot of that, especially just like when I was just walking around and, asking questions about like people's thoughts on like opioid use and what they think are some big solutions. Like, I found people in my neighborhood or community that, like, I didn't know they had any connection to it, but like found that out and was able to get like their feedback on, would you have liked for this device to exist when you were going through whatever you went through? So yeah, there's definitely a lot of that.
So you now have this app and bracelet, and what is happening now with this? Like, is it just like this idea is just percolating on a shelf somewhere, or what's happening now?
So right now we're finalizing some last minute additions to the bracelet app.
Meaning you mean you and like the folks at SLU in this program?
Me and my mentors at SLU. I am solo right now, apart from my mentors, but with them, I'm like, finalizing some last minute things that should probably be on the app or in the bracelet, looking for people to come help. If you have coding experience. Okay. Or like any sort of engineering stuff. I'm actively looking for people just so the product can be as perfect as possible, especially with something like that. The last thing you want to do is have something that's not working great. And then once all that's done, we're getting really close to getting ready to start the research, FDA approval, all those processes. And actively looking for people like investors to help support kind of the starting of launching all of our stuff.
And SLU has hooked you up with patent attorneys, all of those folks, so that this product is protected.
Yes.
Because this is this is intellectual property.
Yep.
And I'm saying all of that because when we did for lack of a better word, the focus groups, like that was the biggest thing that I think people were concerned about, is that they saw that this idea, even in the injectable form, that this idea had real legs, and that it had a place in the market, and that they wanted to protect the idea, but because of who you are and because they liked you and believed in your ingenuity and genuineness, that they wanted to protect this idea for you.
Yeah.
So SLU has hooked you up with all of these people to protect this idea, and they put you in front of investors or something?
Yeah, so
I know I missed this, but tell me about that.
Yeah, so the end of like the accelerator program I did this past summer, we were able to pitch our ideas in front of investors, people who know investors, like just a big network of people.
Now this is really Shark Tank.
Yeah, this is really Shark Tank.
Right. I was so bummed I couldn't be in town, but I heard you like nailed it.
Yeah, Ellis and Patty were there.
Yes.
Jenny Armbruster was there. It was awesome. But yeah, I was able to pitch the idea to a bunch of investors. Definitely got a lot new mentors and people interested who are kind of helping me out before they, put money into it.
Yeah, of course.
But yeah, that was awesome. I did not think I was going to be there a year ago.
And so SLU just gave you an award.
Yeah, I did just get an award.
Talk to me about that.
Yeah, so I got a Student Entrepreneur of the Year award recently, which, again, not something I was expecting, especially not being, a business school major.
Right, because for you, until basically like a year and a half ago, you were like on the pre-med track.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so it was very unexpected, but like it's such a great honor to be given that award. Having like the work I've put in the last, year and a half and kind of being thrown into it, for lack of better words, and having that be recognized is feels great.
Yeah, it should. Yeah. What does FDA approval require? That seems like a kind of big deal.
Yeah. So
what is that going to occupy the next 3 years of your life, or how does this work?
So it depends on the specific path that they want us to take.
Meaning the FDA.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So that I have to submit a primary application first with, this is the device, this is what it does.
With all of your research, with all of that.
Here's all the stuff for it. And then based on that, they'll decide, okay, it's this type of medical device, so here's how long the process is going to take, and here's all the stuff you need to do to get it approved. So not sure how long that's going to take, probably at least a year.
Yeah.
Maybe more, but it's definitely a good experience, especially because I do still want to, be a doctor one day.
Right. So in the midst of all this, you're a senior and you're starting to apply for medical schools?
No.
No.
I'm waiting.
Okay.
I'm waiting a little bit.
Smart. Okay. Because
yes.
I was also going to ask, do you have a social life at all? Are we breathing? Are we hanging out? Okay. So.
Yes.
Okay.
We do have a social life.
Great.
Still
Love
have
it.
that.
Love it.
But yeah, definitely
It's
going
important.
to take at least a year or two off of before, I start applying to med school, just so I can, put all my
effort,
focus, especially with stuff like FDA approval and research for this all coming up. I'm going to have to dedicate a lot of time to that. So,
do you need to make a an LLC? How does that work? I don't know.
I could.
Okay.
I don't necessarily have to.
Oh. Cool.
But
you could.
Yeah. It helps in some cases.
Yeah.
But again, you need money for that.
Yeah,
and
right. Exactly.
I don't have a lot of that right now.
Well, yeah, because you're a student.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know how many of you out there are going, well, that's definitely not what I was doing when I was a junior and senior in college. What kind of doctor do you want to be?
I always wanted to work with kids.
Yeah,
like
I can totally see
in
that.
Pediatrics. But definitely in the last 2 years since I've started doing like addiction medicine research, that has also been an interest that has come up as I've gotten like more involved in doing stuff related to addiction medicine and talking to people who are like patients like in the clinic. I've kind of seen that side of medicine. Because I feel like before then, like with Prevent+Ed, a big part of like things that I've been doing has been like the prevention side.
For sure.
So seeing like the treatment side of addiction medicine has started an interest in that. But I'm keeping an open mind because everyone always says in med school they completely change their interest. So,
oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of people say that. So I'm not tying myself
You're
to
not
anything.
going into one line, you're open. Well, I know, I mean, we've had people on the podcast before, talk a lot about even infusing addiction medicine into primary care.
Mm-hmm.
And I've talked with some folks recently about street medicine, which is really cool, which is like, bringing basically everything from a doctor's office out into the streets. Like that is fascinating to me. Like there's a lot of different places and applications that it could take.
Yeah.
What is this research you're doing?
Yeah. So
So let's talk about that.
So the research I'm doing right now is with the physician at SLU. So through her research, we work to find pretty much better ways to provide treatment to women who are incarcerated, whether it's like substance use treatment, but also providing them better information and treatment when it comes to their like reproductive health. So kind of tying everything together with that. So a lot, kind of like standard procedure in a lot of facilities is women don't really get like follow-up care once they're released.
Like follow-up prenatal care or just follow-up care just in mental health care?
Mental
or just,
health, like substance use treatment
just follow-up care.
Yeah. So usually they don't really have someone to meet with and talk to about like their behaviors, whether it's regarding their reproductive health or their substance use or both. And that usually leads to a lot of recidivism and, they end up back.
Poor health outcomes and all that stuff.
And it's just a never-ending cycle. So what we try to do is try to find better ways to include like motivational interviewing within their treatment. So like every month they meet with a psychologist or therapist, and we come in, we talk to them,
Is this where you're working with Keyway?
That is a different thing.
Oh my gosh, of course it is. Okay.
So this we go directly to like the St. Louis county jail, and we go in and we, every month we sit down, just see how they're doing, form like a close relationship with them.
Yeah.
And then post-release, we follow up with them 2 more times, and get them connected to physicians, treatment programs, all these different things. So that way they have like a sustainable path to recovery if that's what they want.
So what's so interesting to me is that you do all of this because you are, and I hope this comes across the right way, but like you are academically, cerebrally motivated by this, right? Like you didn't lose like a best friend to substance use. You're not a person in recovery. You don't have a parent who was using substances. Like you are coming at this from I see a problem, or I see a challenge, or I see a health inequity, and I want to solve it. Like it's a very different and equally admirable way and motivation behind tackling the problem than I was in recovery. I want to prevent what happened to me, or I had to be revived with Narcan and I don't want anybody else to have that. You're coming at it from here's a problem, here's a solution, or I'm going to try a solution, and then if not, then I'm going to try another one, and I'm going to try another one. Like, where does that like motivation and even wherewithal come from? Because not everybody has that, you know?
Yeah, I think a big part of it was really TI was like
I did not pay you to say that.
That was like my introduction to it. And I think through TI and Prevent+Ed, I met a lot of people who have, you know, lost someone or are in recovery. I've met a lot of people through that way. And I think hearing those personal stories is something that has really motivated me in forming a close relationship with the people who are telling me these stories. I think that's something a lot of people, especially my age, might not always have like someone who has been through that, like, you know, that they meet all the time that can share their story. I think that's another thing I love about TI. Like, you get like personal accounts from people. But I think that's something that a lot of people don't always get.
Oh my gosh, I didn't have that in high school. I mean, we had it in my family, but we never talked about it.
Yeah.
You know, and then to be amongst, to be at TI and be a high schooler and be, you know, forming relationships with people from all walks of life. Like, I think had I done that in high school, I think it would have, I mean, I'm in this field now, but I think it would have really shaped differently how I show up in this space much sooner. I mean, it took me a long time, I think, to really not attack it from a textbook kind of way and more of like an empathetic. And you, I think, start with the brain and then like incorporate the heart at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah. I think hearing all the things I heard and then going back to school and like knowing all these things and knowing like how substance use has affected people and how it still affects them even if they are in recovery, and then seeing like my friends and be like, I don't know what you're talking about, was like another thing. I was like, oh, there's a gap there when it comes to prevention and education. Yeah. And like identifying that gap, but also like caring for the people who have shared their stories with me, like combining and coming together has definitely like has kept me going the last almost 8 years.
Do your parents think you're nuts?
They probably did at the beginning. Like I think after like year 4 of me coming back to TI and doing all this, they were like, she's just gonna keep going back, so we'll just leave her alone. And then I think they were, you know, okay, she's doing research in it, good for her. And then when I said I'm starting a business, they said, oh,
okay,
cool.
What, are you going to be a doctor?
Yeah, they said, is that still the plan? I said, yeah, just going to do this right now too. They said, okay. I think whenever they came to like our little pitch presentations or Shark Tank Day, they were like, oh, like she's really, I think they were like, oh, she's just doing like a fun little project. Like she'll get over it. But then they saw it and they were like, that's awesome. And then I was all over their Facebook pages and everything the next day. So
that's amazing.
Now they're really into it.
I mean, I think you are, for lots of ways, right? Like, you're a really good representation of what can happen. Doesn't always, but what can happen when a young person is surrounded by adults that believe in them, right? And that whether it's your parents, your teachers, your, people at PrevenTable that you were in a small group with, right? Like, when a young person is surrounded by possibility and some access to get them there, and I'm not even talking about access in terms of money. I just mean like access in terms of people listening to them, people saying, wow, that's a really interesting idea. Tell me more. People giving them room to fail or to change their mind. I think, unfortunately, a lot of our young people don't get that. And so you're a perfect example of what happens when somebody does, right? And again, whether that's coming from your family or your friend group or the teachers at your school or your professors or random strangers that you meet that are like pouring their heart out to you because they see something in you. That, I think, is just incredibly rare and awe-inspiring. And I think for me, reminds me that like the kids are all right. Right? Yeah. Like young people get a really bad rap, right? Certain generations get lumped in, and we've been doing this forever. We've been doing it forever. Like, oh, that generation, they're slackers. Or, oh, that generation, the millennials, they want everything handed to them. Oh, Gen Z, they just, whatever. They are on social media all the time. And it's just like, get over yourselves. Like, there's so much cool potential as long as you, like, give them a little bit of space.
Yeah. I definitely agree. Like, I think for me, it was like, the support of, again, you didn't pay me to say this, but the support of like everyone at TI, like all the staff there, I think that's what made me want to come back every year. And now as someone who's back every year, when I see participants come back as participants again, or they come back as TI interns, I think it's like the community there, like every staff person there instills that sense of like, I believe in you to all the participants there, whether they, have that outside of TI or not.
Yeah. At
least like when they come to camp, they know, oh, Nicole believes in me and she made me feel that way last year. And that's why I kept.
And now you're doing it, which is so cool.
Crazy.
It is crazy. It is crazy. You are incredible. And I know you probably get tired of people saying it, and you're very humble, which is awesome. That's why people want to support you, because if you had a huge head, no one would want to support you, and they'd be like, oh, whatever. Like, yeah, it's a cool idea, but she sucks. But no one says that about you. I'm so incredibly proud of you, but I'm also just like really geeked. Like, I'm so excited because, you are working to save lives, like truly. And whether this idea passes FDA approval, which it will, but whether it does or not, like you're still putting forth the effort. When you become a doctor, or if you decide to do something else, like you're going to be impacting people. And that's just so cool. It's just so incredibly amazing.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I could not have done it without you and everyone else at Prevent+Ed.
Well, we are like, I'm sure we're right behind your parents and your sister as like your biggest supporters. We are cheering you on. If you are interested in learning more about how you could maybe support this project with coding experience or engineering experience, or maybe you have a really rich uncle that wants to donate some money to make this thing happen and get on shelves at, Walgreens and CVS's everywhere. I would say reach out to Prevent+Ed, and we will get you in contact with Kirti. Unless you don't have a website or anything you want to push, do you? Or do you?
I have a website, but...
Oh, okay. Do you want to push it, or do you want people to come to us and then we'll push to you? How do you want it to happen?
The website's still like a work in progress, so we'll just...
Okay. So go to info@prevent.org, say you want to support this bracelet, you want to support Kirti, and we will get you in contact. We will be your consigliaries. Seriously, thank you again. I'm so damn proud of you. It's ridiculous. If you like what you heard, and... oh, I know you did on this one, please consider rating, reviewing, and subscribing to The PrevenTable. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for joining us at The PrevenTable, brought to you ad-free by Prevent+Ed. Prevent+Ed works to reduce or prevent the harms of alcohol and other drug use through education, intervention, and advocacy. Please visit their website at PrevenTEd.org. Like what you heard? Rate, review, and subscribe to stay up to date with what we are serving on The PrevenTable.